Hello and welcome to Finally Friday. This chat session is run by EXARC, the Society for Archaeological Open-Air Museums, Experimental Archaeology, Ancient Technology and Interpretation. My name is Phoebe Baker, and today I'm joined by two specialists from our EXARC community focusing on starting a journal. Martina Revello Lami is an archaeologist and guest researcher at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Although mainly focusing on how human choice can be expressed in ceramic objects, Martina's research has recently expanded to begin exploring the complex relationship between archaeology and society. This is a core aspect of the Novo Journal of Archaeology, of which she is Vice Director, co-founder and editor. Novo is an open access and peer-reviewed international journal founded in 2005, which encourages interdisciplinary research and encompasses prehistory to the modern period. Luca Bartoni specializes in IT, but has always been interested in history and culture. He began his venture into living history in 2002 and is currently the president of Archaeology Reenactment Historia. As well as this, Luca is a journal manager of the digital journal Archaeology Sperimentali Temi Metodi Ricerche, which published its first issue in 2020. Archaeology Sperimentali is the first journal in Italy focusing specifically on experimental archaeology and aims to strengthen methodological debate and multidisciplinary research in this area. So, welcome to both of you and thank you so much for joining me. I have a quick question to start you both off. Starting a journal is not an experience that many people get to have. So how did you first become involved in setting up journals?
Hi, Phoebe. Thank you for inviting us over. And I'm also speaking on behalf of my colleagues at Novo, Maya Gori, Alessandro Pintucci. Three of us, we are, let's say, the oldest founders and editors at the journal. Now we have two new members, Mariana Fusco and Jesus Garcia Sanchez. I'm very happy to mention them. And first, because the family is expanding, and then because we hope, of course, also to expand the network and the readers in this way. So you just asked, how did I started my venture with Novo? Well, it all started with Alessandro and Maya. It dates back to 2005 when we were at the university. And in that moment, we felt like there was a deep disconnection between our subject, between our discipline, so what we were studying, and the present world, the contemporary society. I think this is even more evident in Italy because we tend, and by we I mean the academia tends to live in a sort of ivory tower or a golden isolation. So archaeology back in 2000s, but also now it is somehow perceived as a very distant discipline that doesn't really have so much to do with present. It actually is more involved with the past and perhaps modern history. So we perceived this type of disconnection as first a problem for the discipline per se, for archaeology, but also a lost opportunity for us as researchers and archaeologists in general, because that cuts you off from any political debate, from anything that has to do with modern day issues. And so this was basically what started us off. And now we have to fast forward to 2016, when we actually gave birth materially to the journal, because in 2005 we had a sort of pilot. We also drafted a first issue, but that was just an internal, let's say, manifesto. I would really call that edition of 2005 a manifesto. But then everything then kind of slightly faded away. We were, of course, involved in our lives and works and so on. And then, fast forward to 2016, we simply resumed the work. And that first issue, the internal manifesto, was the appendix of our first issue in 2016. So the same instances that we brought forward in 2005 were actually still valid in 2016. This says something about archaeology, I believe, or maybe archaeology in Italy.
Luca, how did you also become involved in setting up your journal?
Yes, it was a dream for us when we started practicing experimental archaeology in our association. We joined after a while in the EXARC network, and we see how much is important for the academic debate, the experiments of this discipline. But we found also that there exists a gap, probably what we identified in Italy, where there's something to be put down as experimental archaeology is something different, is something scientific from, for example, reenactment or from divulgation. So we would like to fill that gap and try to create a sort of debate using this journal, this scientific journal, to start applying a methodology on this. Thanks to the University of Torino, that became reality, and thanks to our project leader, Chiara Lebole, that I would like also to mention my co-workers this journey that are Lara Comis, Marco Pitone, Valeria Cobianchi, Giorgio Di Gangi, and Yuri Godino. Thanks to this team that is very, very passionate. This kind of challenge that, because for us was the first experience in journal creation and management, that became a reality, and was not easy, of course, because a new scientific journal that borns and does not have this kind of visibility to obtain a lot of articles from professors or researchers. So what we did in the past is to involve in our scientific committee important persons, important professors that can give more visibility to the journal. And thanks to them, we had in the first issue an important number of articles. Now that the first issue was released in 2020, is now more easy to have more articles because people have noticed the importance of this kind of divulgation, and in particular it's a scientific journal that is in double peer review, blind peer review, so is growing the interest from the academic in Italy.
Thank you, Luca. You mentioned in your answer about some of the difficulties in setting up a journal. So would you say it's quite difficult to become seen as a serious journal and to attract submissions for that first issue?
Yes, it's something that is important to pay attention to, of course, is the content of the articles, is the double blind peer review, is another very important stuff. Of course, is important, as I mentioned before, the scientific committee, because that gives us a sort of authoritative vision on this kind of arguments. The president of the scientific committee is Vincent Sornel, for example.
I may add something to what Luca just said. Well, of course, anything that starts from scratch, just like it's Novo or Archaeology Sperimentali, will have hardship at the beginning because you're not known, and we all know that academic publishing is dictated and dominated by the scary indexing. So if you don't exist, since some time you don't exist at all. But I guess that in this sense, it might seem cheesy, but the union makes us a bit stronger. So having a valid editorial board, as Luca mentioned, is key here. So of course, every one of us has quite a network, but adding to each and every one of us network other people will multiply that. And I have to admit, I was surprised in the second issue, because the first issue was kind of a pilot for us. So we decided to go a bit safer, and we used one panel that organized for a conference. So let's say that the first issue was really warming up. And in that very issue, we immediately understood what the workflow would be, how difficult it is to follow every single step from production to publishing. But after the first issue, it was not absolutely not difficult to receive submissions. On the opposite, we sometimes had to sadly reject them. So I think there is, even if archaeological journals, heritage journals, are several and probably better indexed than to very young ones, there's so much search for research output that it's never redundant. So I would encourage everyone that is planning to venture in this crazy thing to just do it, because even if it seems like it's just a sort of redundant topic, the one that you will be choosing for your journal is not, because the venues are multiple, but not as open and accessible as we wish. So.
Yes, this is an important topic. I think also to be open and accessible for everyone, in particular, because for us it's very important that knowledge is shared as much as possible. All in that way we can create value, no? In experimental archaeology, focusing on this topic as a scientific approach, if an experiment is done from someone somewhere in the world, it's important that it's shared. Also, the method is shared, because in that way some other people can try the same and produce information and collaborate to confirm or not this value that became from the first experiment. That should be something that has to be, as much as we can, open and freely accessible for everyone. What do you think?
Well, accessibility and openness for journals in general is key, of course. It's a huge, huge topic, this one. For experimental archaeology in particular, because of course there has been some delay in formalize the protocols for experimental archaeologists, and then of course the accessibility and visibility of the data and the work behind has been limited so far. So of course, if a journal like yours will provide a database, for instance, with all the experiment accessible, just like platforms such as EXARC, of course, that will be already a great contribution to the discipline. For Ex Novo, I would have never imagined to say that, but yes, we are a more traditional journal. We talk archaeology, we talk theory, but and actually what we fear is a collection of articles. They're basically presenting raw data without commenting on them. So we try to invite reflection and, well, some more work on the theoretical framework. But the freedom as editors that we have of choosing the topics to be addressed, giving guidelines and asking the researchers and scholars and the professionals and of all disciplines to reflect upon specific topics, it's just priceless. So that's definitely a plus working in a journal that you shape a bit as you like. And also the freedom of choosing the medium. So we don't have just a paper version of the journal. We are freely downloadable from our website, from the website of our publisher. But we are also experimenting with other channels, YouTube channels, graphic novels, live interviews. Possibilities are endless.
It's really interesting the channels that you mentioned before, using also other multimedia method and channels to share information.
I think for experimental archaeology, for your journal, for Archeologia Sperimentali, it is pivotal. You really have to diversify, I think, and everything now can be used as a research output. I don't know whether we will regret this in the future, because, well, quality check sometimes might be less thorough than with a blind review, as we do also in Exnovo. But I think it's simply another way of communicating. And as long as the process that you are describing is sound, there is a protocol, I guess, that the medium can change.
In our journal, of course, we permit media because is everything digital, so we permit videos, photos, and so on. But what is really interesting, I guess, is something to create in real time, some things to stream live using this kind of channel to communicate more.
Clearly, Phoebe, we are all based in Italy. I don't know what the behind the scenes was for you, Luca, but with Exnovo, one of the difficulties that we encountered, aside the nightmare of not having some submission, was to formally register and file the request to be a journal, because we decided to base the journal in Italy, which of course means some sort of bureaucratic nightmare to get the formalization as a journal, a periodical publication. You need to take few administrative steps, few formal steps that involve the enrollment in the public registry, go to a notary, go to court sometimes. We were absolutely not ready to face that. For us, that was the real nightmare, the real journey. We managed, and once again, being more than one person helps. But you have to do your homework. You really have to do your homework and understand how does it work, whether it's needed, for instance, to have a physical base, a legal acknowledgement of the existence of your journal. At that time, it was because we needed to have ISSN number. And then as soon as you start over with the open access, you need to face the fact that you will need a DOI number. So all these technicalities frustrate a bit the empathy, the enthusiasm that you can have at the beginning. But once you figure them out, it's okay.
Yes, it's something that, of course, limited our dreams now and before, because it's a huge amount of bureaucracy to accomplish. It's also an economic phase that is not easy to accept. So in that way, what helped us to attain ISS number and to be listed in the directories, became a real formalized journal, was University of Torino, that helped us with all this bureaucracy, and we create and obtain through University of Torino this kind of formalization, and also the ISS number and direct listing. And because otherwise it's very, very, very hard to achieve that.
Decided not to have the journal affiliated to any of our alma maters. I don't even remember why, but I guess we kind of felt like we needed to have an independent project. That would have probably eased a bit our first foray into publishing. But I remember that one of the big help and support was the fact that one of us had previous experience in publishing, and that was very, very helpful too. I mean, go through and survive to the paperwork. It's important to have had experience in publishing, but as an author, but really on the technical side.
Yes, the technical side is quite important also from my point of view. In particular, we have in our team Valeria Chiobianchi, that is very, very focused and expertise in the editorial side of the journal, and helped us a lot working on all these technicalities related in particular to the format of the journal, and to keep it as much as professional as we can.
Oh, okay, so it's more on the technical side, but not necessarily integral to it. Oh, very helpful.
Yes, it's like having a very solid base at the beginning, so you know what you're facing. But it's not one of those needed requirements. Sometimes being completely blindfolded, it's better to jump off a cliff.
Oh, that's a good point. I see where you're coming from. And you mentioned earlier you were talking about outreach and accessibility, but you were, Luca, you mentioned how you have videos and interactive content within some of your journal articles. I was wondering, for people who are not necessarily able to pay for journal access, or affiliated to organizations that might be able to give them that access, how do you think we can start to make journals more accessible? I know, Martina, your journal has a blog. Do you have any other? Yeah, sorry.
We have actually we have the Facebook page and we have a website and also institutional website inside of OJS and the University of Torino, and all of three, of course, have in free access without any kind of registration. You can go there and download the full journal or the single articles directly, and we aim also to upload in academia.com the articles from our journal. So is something that we open wide, sharing with everybody that wants to download it.
And I can definitely praise the additional value of having a Facebook page. It's amazing. It's still one of the first hit look for something if on Google or anything else. So of course that's expanding the visibility enormously. It has it's immediate. We also have our Twitter account, and then of course, yes, the blog, but our blog is in the website, so you have to reach and to know the website. So basically we use also Facebook and Twitter as teasers when we have something new on the blogger. That's definitely the first channel for reaching the widest public.
So there's quite a few different channels that you can go through. That sounds really positive.
It depends on your geological era, of course. For me, Instagram is still a bit the new. It's like another chore that I have to attend. But yes, we could also use that, and Twitch, for instance, it's super instead of YouTube. But I'm again old-fashioned, so we decided to start off some interviews and post them on YouTube. But of course, the options are endless, and the possibilities also.
It's very interesting that YouTube users, let me say, using like a sort of TV show, no, with interviews and sharing more content besides the article.
Yes, also because the attention span of every one of us is different now. So it depends on what type of information you want to convey. It depends on how much interaction you want to have with your audience. And clearly, scientific journals shouldn't shy away from using this other type of outreach because it's not diminishing the intense and painstaking work that we are doing for publishing our articles. It's just two different ways of communicating and reaching out, which, once again, this goes back to the first reason why we decided to embark in Ex Novo. Well, archaeology has not been always that accessible in this sense, especially for complex topics and issues that seem to be relegated to one specific type of audience, specialists, and then for the larger audience, just other kind of superficial topics and subjects. Can use different channels for different topics.
That's a really good way of making it more interactive and engaging, I guess.
Multimedia is something that attracts attention very, very easily, so it's easier to engage people.
Have you ever struggled with engagement at all, or?
For the engagement of contributors, just in the first issue now is something that is going much easier. Meanwhile, for the public is something that is not so hard. The interest on the journal was very high from the beginning. People that was really curious about was a lot of people. So we aim to have more downloads in next issues. But of course is something that we have to play with always, because engagement of new persons are always important.
I think it depends a bit on the audience you're targeting. That's fundamental. So of course you will balance out the communication to the audience you're targeting. So we definitely had a lot of interaction with colleagues, authors, researchers. I still remember one or two topics that we addressed in the blog had, I don't know how many comments, because those topics were so much close to probably our core audience, so other archaeologists, that we started a sort of debate, a thread of comments on the blog. But then again, that is a pretty static way of engaging, right? Because you read a blog, you write a comment, you go away. I think sometimes because we are all overworked, we tend to forget maybe to summarize the results. So we should have probably resumed a bit and maybe summarize the main results, or maybe keep going the debate. So all these topics, of course, can spark a debate that might take a more formal format. So it might be just an entire issue, or it can just be a quick reply and comment on Twitter. In any case, I think it adds up to at least our awareness as scholars. So if researchers and archaeologists in general, specialists, no specialists, and if the core business of the journal is to raise awareness, then it's okay. Then it's a good output also. That.
Thank you. Are there other issues at the moment in academic publishing that affect how you work?
Oh, well, yes, I have a long list. This is actually opening a can of worms. I probably briefly already touched upon the indexing and existing or not existing in academia if your name doesn't get cited. So to enter in this system, any journal needs to be recognized and acknowledged by specific platforms that rate you just as you would do in Yelp or TripAdvisor. So depending on how many times a journal has been cited, then the index, the rating will grow. And then if your index is growing, of course, also the index of authors publishing in the journal will grow. The problem is, of course, that not all journals are like Archaeology Sperimentali or Ex Novo, completely free. We have a very good deal with our publisher, ArchaeoPress, so we can publish entirely for free our journal Open Access in their through their website. So there are no fees for us nor for our authors. But this is absolutely not the norm. The norm in scientific publishing is to apply a fee on authors. It's called the APC, so the author's contribution and charge. So if you think that every single author should pay an amount of money to publish his own research, then of course you already know that some researchers, self-funded or less funded than others, won't have access to journals, and even worse, won't have access to the most prestigious journals, the ones that have a very high index. So this is a system that it definitely cannot be called open access, although that's the name. And it is a huge topic in publishing. There have been many different initiatives trying to rebalance the overpower of few publishing companies on knowledge dissemination, because that's what happens. But I think there is still a long way to go to have a completely free knowledge dissemination. There have been, as I said, different initiatives to allow more people to access free publishing. I think that is the way forward. But of course, this is of course also creating a problem to the publishing system. So I'm not aiming to have everything for free for everyone, because I know, hey, that this is also work for many people.
Yes, in our case, always thanks to the framework given to us by University of Torino. For us, it is a little bit easier because for us, the publisher is the university directly, and so for us, it's important just to scale up the ranking of the journal to reach an higher level. But we are too young yet, and we need to pass some more time before doing that.
Still, the fact that everyone is aiming at opening as much as possible research, that's what also Coalition has, which is one of those visionary movement that wanted to have a real immediate access to research and try to start publishing without fees for authors. But yeah, it depends on the circumstances, of course, and it is still a complex endeavor for anyone involved in research. I think that the possibility of diversifying the output, always thinking to the citation index, it may help to overcome the problem of indexes, because the MOOC platform also are included the citation index. The more options there will be to, let's see, being visible also for smaller minor journals and therefore probably early career researchers.
Sounds like a lot of different directions we can go in the future to improve on those issues. Thank you, Martina. And thank you both for such an interesting discussion. I just have one final question before we open this up to our listeners, which kind of touches on what you were saying, Martina, and asks, what are your plans for the future, and how can the EXARC community help to make a difference in regards to the points that you've discussed today?
For us, EXARC was everything. Was the beginning of our journey. Was the network where every of us meet, and for us is the huge help that EXARC can do is doing what is already doing now, because it's doing brilliantly. So keeping all these experience from Europe united in one network and have the possibility to have the contacts inside the network and sharing experience through the events and so on, for us is the biggest help that EXARC can give us. So we are really happy to be member of this network.
A wonderful response. Martina?
I totally agree with Luca. Of course, EXARC is already, I wouldn't say experiment, because first it's pun intended, but no, it's not an experiment anymore. It's an established reality. So I would say that the fact that you are using also different outputs, it definitely reinforces the ties between different specialisms, different places, of course, and different stages of career for your audience. So yeah, definitely keep it going as you are, and yeah, maybe cross boundaries more often. So the fact that you invited a journal like Ex Novo, that it's way more theoretical than practical philosophy of EXARC, I think it's one great way to start mixing it up and of course multiply the audience and the possibilities for both on both sides. So.
Oh, well, thank you for agreeing to join us. It's been such a wonderful discussion.